Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a little game called Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's Valentia, not Sia. That's a good start to the video. Yes, I've been playing this game, and I've got a few insights into the game, and I'm going to tell you all about it. That's pretty much why you clicked on this video. Or at least I assume so. Maybe you just wanted to see some gameplay footage, in which case... So, well, you'll see some, I suppose. So what is Fire Emblem Echoes: Shadows of Valentia? Well, it is a remake of an older game, the second game in the Fire Emblem series, and it's often been considered the black sheep of the series, and I didn't know that until I researched it prior to this video. Which is a great thing, because to be honest with you, it really does feel like it could be an entirely new Fire Emblem game. To some schmo like me, I've only played 2 Fire Emblem games now. I know, it's terrible, and I still haven't played them for very long. That's not including Shadows of Valentia, so that's 3! That's a 50% increase. Nice. Visually, it looks very similar to Fire Emblem Fates, not in terms necessarily of the aesthetic per se, but in the way that the graphics are done and stuff like that. It looks very similar, but there are loads of really interesting new things. Well, I say new, they're old mechanics that have been brought forward, because this is a very true remake, if you like, and it doesn't really muddle around with things too much, but it is also a total remake. It's not just like a fancy port with fancy graphics, which is nice. That's what we like to see. So there are all these weird mechanics that haven't really appeared in the Fire Emblem series since. One of which I found was really interesting, was that you can run around these areas, you know, sort of in real time. It's not turn-based, it's not on a map. You, in third person, are running around these areas and you get to explore, and it's really nice and fresh, and to be honest, it gives you just a little bit more something to do in Fire Emblem, and I love Fire Emblem, I really do, although my playtime doesn't really equate to that, but you really do need to invest a lot of time to properly enjoy a Fire Emblem game. But when I was playing around, it just sort of made everything feel a little bit more real, and you're running around and you're exploring this area, and more in sort of traditional RPG style. If you come across an enemy, they'll run towards you and engage you in combat, and you'll have that sort of traditional Fire Emblem gameplay, but that's not how you usually get around. These are only in very certain locations. The bulk of the game is very similar to what you'd expect from a standard Fire Emblem experience, and it's a good one. But back to this new thing. I don't know whether it's got a name specifically or anything like that, but I really enjoyed playing through. You can go through, find secret areas, find chests with new weapons in them, and you can engage in lots of different fights, and the enemies behave very much like you were actually in that situation, although they are really quite blind, but we'll let them off this time. So if you sort of try and sneak around, you can avoid the enemies, but you really want to get stuck in there and you want to battle them and get your XP up. And you can't just go running around these caves forever. You have a fatigue sort of system with each individual member of your party. And so if you hang around for too long, the fatigue will slowly, well, decrease, I say, you know, sort of they will become more fatigued over time and they won't be able to battle. And you can just leave at the drop of a hat anytime you like, which is a really nice touch when you got something like that going. But you do lose all sort of progress you have, and there is usually really tasty stuff at the back of these things, so it's well worth having an old snoop around. But a Fire Emblem game isn't just about all the gameplay, is it? No, it is also about the story and how the story is presented, and thankfully it's ruddy fantastic in this, to say the least. The first thing that you see when you start to load up the game is a proper animated cutscene, and it looks gorgeous. Even just on the 3DS's small screen, when it's blown up and how you'll see it now, it may not look as good because it'll be quite low res, but on the 3DS screen, it looks great, and it is really beautifully animated. However, most of the cutscenes do take the traditional format of just having pictures of people and text appear at the bottom, but they're fully voiced, and I believe there's more voicing in this than there was in Fire Emblem Fates, but don't quote me on that. I think maybe there's just more dialogue in this game in particular, so it seems like there's more. I don't know, but you do get some interesting lines of dialogue, to say the least. There's this one point fairly early on in the game, and one of these evil characters has invaded this wood and is looking for the village to try and find a particular character. Don't worry, it's spoiler-free, and he does use the expression pig feed and horse piss, which is a little bit ripe for a Fire Emblem game, in my opinion, at least what I've played so far. So it's interesting to see an arguably more mature angle, you know, going for something a little bit more adult as opposed to going for a more child-friendly angle. Not that the Fire Emblem series has been particularly child-friendly, but even in the dialogue this time, it's getting just a smidge spicier, and I like it. And actually, a lot of the dialogue is fairly refreshing in the sense that it's actually, you know, decently written to a degree, you know. I mean, from a video game perspective, it's fantastic, but if you compare it to a film or something like that, the dialogue's not out of this world, but it's far more than I expected, to be honest with you, particularly from such an old game, and assuming, I don't know for sure, that the dialogue has been taken from the older game and brought onto this one, but again, I don't know, maybe it's been reworked. Actually, I don't think it was ever released in Western territory, so it was never in English, so it's probably entirely new. The voice acting is a little bit stilted here and there, but again, this is a video game. You can't expect absolutely tip-top, 100% wonderful Kevin Costner and Jim Broadbent coming in and doing their lines. It's just not what happens in these video games.
I know what it is, and if Grandfather won't do it, then I'll do it for him.
On the most part, it's generally pretty good, particularly when the characters get older, because they start off in like sort of a pre-story thing when they're really young and they're children, and that gets a little bit whiny, and it sort of gets in the back of my head, and it makes my ears hurt a little bit. But when they get older, it's a lot better. I've got to say, on the whole, the game feels a lot newer than it actually is, you know, being that it's just a port of a much older game. Not a port, sorry, it's a remake from the ground up as far as I can tell, and I'm assuming it's using the same engine as Fire Emblem Fates. I can't be certain about that, but just, you know, from what little you've seen, I'm sure it looks very similar. Although, you know, in regards to like the battles and stuff like that, in my opinion, it's never looked better. I mean, the environments are a little bit more sort of basic, in my opinion, but generally, you know, sort of the battles are quick to get in. You see the animation. The animation is fantastic. And you got some really, really athletic horses going on in there as well. And it just overall is a really, really lovely experience. It looks really polished, and it's a lot more than, honestly, I was really expecting. I even get the feeling that the Nintendo themselves have advertised this more as like a quick port, you know, a side project, not a big deal. But it's got so much new stuff, and it's not just like it's Fire Emblem Fates with a different story. The presentation is very different in some regards. I mean, overall it looks very similar. It's not the difference between, you know, Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario 64, but you're not expecting that. It's still a Fire Emblem game, but there's so many new things that have been added in, you know, from this older title that haven't been in a Fire Emblem game since, and to be honest, I think they've been missing out, because from what little I've seen, and I have not played an awful lot, it has to be said, it's been really refreshing, to be honest. I mean, there are a few little niggles here and there with things like, you know, sort of, I think maybe there's too much talking and there's not enough battling. I mean, it gives you a good sense of the characters, and if you're more into the story, then that's fantastic. And but there isn't really as much battling as I would like, at least from what little I've played. Also, it does seem to be quite a bit easier. I mean, I'm only playing on normal mode. I'm not playing on hard, but I was playing Fire Emblem Fates on normal as well, and I found that to be considerably more difficult. So I don't know whether maybe I'm still in like an early learning center tutorial area, and, you know, it's going to slap me around the face when I get further on into the game. But I've been, you know, I've been sort of breezing through it, really. I don't have to be as tactical as I did in Fire Emblem Fates, which is a bit of a disappointment, to be honest, but there is always hard mode, but I don't think I can change the difficulty setting mid-game. Must admit, I haven't tried. I've got to say, I think Nintendo and Intelligent Systems have been doing themselves a disservice with this game so far, because they should be advertising this like it's a brand new Fire Emblem game, and they're more just sort of, you know, it was announced very quietly, and I think, to be honest, they've been giving more of a spotlight to Fire Emblem Warriors on the whole, maybe because it's on an older system, being the 3DS and not the Switch. If it came to the Switch, I would love that. I think it would look fantastic, even if it was just, you know, sort of with marginally improved graphics, doesn't have to go all the way. I think it would look fantastic, and it would reach arguably a broader audience, maybe. Because I think, you know, with the 3DS, a lot of people are sort of losing interest a bit, or at least that's the sense that I've been getting from people, which is a real shame, because it's still a good system, even if it is absolutely archaic in comparison to the Switch. So, overall, I'd say that Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia is looking to be a really, really promising game, and something that deserves to be on the same level as Fire Emblem Fates. I don't know, because I haven't played a lot of it, but at the moment, moment, from what little I've played, I'm really impressed. There are a few little caveats I have here and there, things like there not being enough battling and there being too much wittering from the characters. If you're more into the story, then that's great, but for me personally, I'm more into the battles, but I don't want to miss anything important, you know? So I'm still sitting through and listening to all the rabbiting that they're doing, but overall, it's a little bit more adult, I would say, than Fire Emblem Fates on the whole, but again, not very far into the game. Difficult to tell, but overall impressions, really very positive. I'm looking forward to it. But what do you think about this game that you probably haven't even played yet? Let us know down there in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you change that subscribe button into a mounted Pegasus subscribe button, or whatever it is they're calling them, and be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.